Hello, and welcome to the Food as a Business seminar series focused on food safety at the farmers market. Today we'll be talking about Mississippi farmers markets and what is allowed to be sold at farmers markets, as well as some other guidelines and recommendations. Our objectives for this presentation include understand what products are allowed to be sold at Mississippi farmers markets. Identify the requirements regarding permits, licenses, and certifications for specific commodities. And lastly, provide guidance and assistance to those interested in selling products. Several items are allowed at Mississippi farmers markets. These include fresh produce, honey and syrup products, baked goods and processed foods, meats, shrimp and seafood, dairy products, plants, as well as fresh cut flowers. If you are interested in selling fresh produce, the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Guidelines do have some requirements that producers must meet. If the product you are selling is raw, uncut, and unprocessed, there are no permits, licenses, or certificates required. However, if you do process your fresh produce, you are required to get a license or permit from the Mississippi State Department of Health because you are processing your produce. If you are selling produce sold by weight, you must use a National Type Evaluation Program approved scale. All scales, in this manner, must be approved by the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce, Weights and Measures Division. Most states require an NTEP certification for new scales. That will be used to weigh products you are selling. This certification is important because it proves that the scale you are using meets regulatory standards. So when you're making transactions with consumers or customers, you certainly don't want to give away free product if your scale isn't accurate, and vice versa. Consumers don't want to be cheated for the amount of product that they're paying for. So the scale ensures that everyone is having an equal transaction. So some tips before you buy. We've certainly made you aware of the specific seal for scales or any sorts of measures that you're using. Be aware of the specific regulations. Know who you are buying from. Look for that specific seal on the products that you are considering purchasing. Identify the manufacturer, model, and certificate number, and look for the legal for trade disclaimer. That way you know that you're actually getting a product that is legally for trade. When comparing prices, think of the bigger picture. So you want a scale that meets your demand in the long run. You certainly don't want to buy the cheapest model in the case that it breaks down and you have to purchase another one. So weigh the options with the cost benefits and pick a scale that is best used for your operation. Also, it's important to consider to contact your regulatory authority before you buy. That way you are sure that you're meeting the requirements set forth by the state. Honey and syrup is allowed to be sold at Mississippi farmers markets. A food permit from the Mississippi State Department of Health is required only if the vendor sells more than 500 gallons annually. If the honey being sold is not pure honey, the added ingredients must be properly listed on the label. Proper packaging and labeling is required. At the Mississippi farmers markets, you will also see cottage food products and processed food products. Based on the risk level of products being sold, vendors, with the exception of cottage food operators, must obtain the proper food permit from the Mississippi State Department of Health. Cottage food operations are exempt from permitting requirements, which means there aren't any specific permits or licenses required to have a cottage food operation. However, cottage food operations are restricted with the certain products they're allowed to make in their home. So that's a really important area to find information about. We have a separate Food as a Business seminar presentation just focused on cottage foods. A cottage food operation is restricted with the annual gross sales of cottage food products, and it cannot exceed $20,000. Cottage food products are non-potentially hazardous food products. This includes products such as baked goods, jams, jellies, and acidified foods. Typically, foods that do not require refrigeration are considered non-potentially hazardous. Some products may need to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. If there is some doubt as to the safety of some foods, documentation of proper processing may be required. This is a wonderful opportunity to reach out to Mississippi State University if you have specific questions about the cottage food product that you're interested in making out of your home. Mississippi State University does provide guidance and testing if your product requires it. Producers of acidified foods, so products like salsas, pickled products, pickles, chow chow, are highly encouraged to get specific training for the procedures of these foods. This helps to ensure that these products are both legal and safe. And there is specific packaging and labeling requirements for cottage food. If you decide to make a cottage food product, there are specific requirements for labeling of your cottage food product. Remember that this is an important aspect for consumers identifying what is in your cottage food product. So consider it like a consumer's right to know of your product. Components of the label include the name of the cottage food operation, the address of the cottage food operation, the name of the cottage food product. This should be very straightforward, so I should know that I am in fact buying cookies. The ingredients of the cottage food product in descending order predominance of weight. So the ingredient that you use the most of in your recipe should be listed first, and the least ingredient that you use should be listed last. So in our case, enriched flour is the largest component of the recipe, whereas salt is the smallest component. You also need to include the allergen information. When you're listing the ingredients, it's a good idea to also list the sub-ingredients because allergens tend to hide in the sub-ingredients. And when I say sub-ingredients, that means the parentheses. You can see enriched flour has wheat flour, malted barley flour, and it continues. So all that information is really critical to your label and should be included. For our cookie product, we have milk, eggs, wheat, and soy. There are 8 allergens. It's also required to list the net weight or net volume of the cottage food product. Mississippi also requires a specific statement releasing them from liability because they are not inspecting or permitting or licensing any cottage food operations. The statement must be in a 10-point type font in a color that provides a clear contrast to the background of the label. The statement is made in a cottage food operation that is not subject to Mississippi's food safety regulations. You will also see eggs at Mississippi farmers markets. A retail food sanitation license for eggs from the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce Consumer Protection Division is required. A copy of this retail food sanitation license for eggs must be displayed and made available to the purchaser at the location where eggs will be offered for sale. So that certificate needs to be either available or kind of a point of purchase, like a pop-up display, so the consumer knows that they are purchasing eggs that are in fact permitted. Clean shell eggs must be maintained at or below 45 degrees ambient temperature under mechanical refrigeration, which means in a refrigerator and/or cooler with AC or DC power. Ambient temperature means the environment around the eggs, not necessarily the eggs themselves. So the air around the eggs needs to be 45 degrees Fahrenheit. For any eggs sold off the farm, the layer shall have a National Poultry Improvement Program testing by the Mississippi Board of Animal Health. There are specific packaging and labeling requirements for eggs. We also have a Food as a Business seminar series focused on eggs, and if you're interested in selling eggs, I would encourage you to look at that presentation. Meat and poultry is allowed to be sold at Mississippi farmers markets. A vendor selling meat must obtain a mobile retail food sanitation license from MDAC. Products being sold must be properly inspected by the USDA or the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce. For products sold by weight, you must use the National Type Evaluation Program approved scale, as we talked about earlier. All scales must be tested annually by the MDAC Weights and Measures Division. There are specific labeling requirements, including the identity of the product, the processor's name, the processor's address, safe handling instructions, and the net weight declaration if necessary. To the right, you can see the safe handling instructions. It's also important to emphasize that you must get meat and poultry processed and inspected at a recognized processing establishment. You cannot process at home and bring those to the farmers markets. They must go through a permitted establishment, either recognized by USDA or the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce. Meat and poultry also must be transported and sold out of refrigerated vehicles. Vendors must transport and sell meat and other potentially hazardous food products from a refrigerated vehicle, such as an insulated truck or trailer that has a continuous mechanical refrigeration system run by a generator or an approval plug in a cold plate system as the refrigeration source. The product temperature of 41 degrees or less must be maintained at all times using this vehicle. For this vehicle, the following information must be displayed during sale: the license, the name, the address, as well as the telephone number. Shrimp and seafood can be sold at Mississippi farmers markets. A seafood dealer's license from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources or a food permit from the Mississippi State Department of Health is required for vendors selling raw shrimp or seafood. If the shrimp is being cooked or steamed, a food permit is required from the Mississippi State Department of Health because you are processing that product. If you are selling products by weight, the scale must be a National Type Evaluation Program scale approved by MDAC annually by the Weights and Measures Division. Dairy products are allowed to be sold at Mississippi farmers markets. However, there are additional requirements and licenses required to sell dairy products. A vendor must obtain the proper permit from the Mississippi State Department of Health. A vendor selling dairy products must obtain a mobile retail food sanitation license from the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce. Vendors must transport and sell dairy products from a refrigerated vehicle, similar to what we discussed with meat and poultry. For products sold by weight, you must use that NTEP approved scale, and those scales must be tested annually by MDAC Weights and Measures Division. There are specific proper packaging and labeling required for selling dairy products at farmers markets. The Mississippi State Department of Health and Mississippi State University can assist you in the development to meet these specific requirements. To emphasize, raw milk is illegal to sell in the state of Mississippi, and you will not see raw milk at farmers markets. Plants are also allowed to be sold at the farmers markets. However, there are specific restrictions on the types of plants that can be sold. No person can deal in plant materials that are known to harbor noxious plant diseases or invasive weeds, plants, or sell plants that are on the noxious weed list per the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce Bureau of Plant Industry. If you want more information, please contact the Bureau of Plant Industry. We have provided a short list of Mississippi noxious weed lists that are prohibited to be sold at the farmers markets. Lastly, fresh cut flowers are allowed to be sold, and there are no permits, licenses, or certificates required to sell fresh cut flowers at the farmers market. If you would like more information about selling products at the farmers market, you can reach out to the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce using the links provided, or you may call them by clicking the links and finding the specific phone numbers of the departments you are trying to reach. If you are trying to find information about sales tax, please contact your local Mississippi Department of Revenue office. If you would like specific information, you can also contact Mississippi State University. Dr. Courtney Chris can provide information about food products and specific sales and meeting labeling and food safety requirements for products. Additional contact information is provided on this page, including information with the Mississippi Board of Animal Health if you're looking for the test for the National Poultry Improvement Program, and the relevant departments from the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce, the Mississippi State Department of Health, and the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, and Mississippi State University. We'd like to thank you again for joining our Food as a Business seminar series focused on food safety at the farmers markets. This program is supported by the Mississippi State University Extension Service, the Extension Risk Management Education Center, and the United States Department of Agriculture National Institute of Food and Agriculture, award number 20154920024228. Please feel free to contact us if you have any additional questions.